Emily's weekends were predictable. Coffee shop mornings, quiet afternoons at the flea market, and evenings attempting to write stories that never seemed to go anywhere. Her dream of becoming an author had dulled over the years, beaten down by rejection letters and self-doubt. But that Saturday, something changed. She was wandering through the flea market's maze of stalls when she saw it, a journal tucked beneath a pile of dusty books. Its leather cover was cracked and worn, yet the golden lettering on the spine shone like new. Your story awaits. Emily picked it up, running her fingers over the embossed title. The vendor, an old man with piercing blue eyes, noticed her hesitation. "Take it," he said. "No charge. It's meant for you." Emily blinked. "Are you sure?" The man nodded, a cryptic smile on his face. "You'll know what to do." She walked away, the journal clutched tightly in her hands. That night, Emily sat at her desk, the journal open before her. Its yellowed pages were blank, but seemed to hum with an unspoken energy. She grabbed a pen and wrote the first thing that came to mind. The woman sat at her desk, trying to find the right words to begin her story. The ink dried almost instantly, and Emily smiled at the simplicity of it. But before she could turn the page, words began to appear beneath hers, written in the same handwriting. But the story had already begun, and she was part of it. Emily's breath caught. She stared at the journal, half expecting it to burst into flames. "What?" she whispered, her voice trembling. More words appeared, the same one who listens. She slammed the journal shut and pushed it to the edge of her desk, her heart pounding. Yet curiosity gnawed at her. Against her better judgment, she opened it again. Over the next few days, Emily tested the journal, writing questions and watching as it responded. "What's your name?" she asked once. "What's yours?" the journal replied. Its answers were always brief, enigmatic, and eerily perceptive. It knew things about her no one else could: her childhood fears, her failed relationships, her dreams she barely dared to admit even to herself. She began to feel a strange connection to the book, as though it understood her better than anyone else ever had. But then, the tone of its responses shifted. One night she wrote, "What should I write about?" The journal replied, "The shadow that stands behind you." Emily froze. A chill ran down her spine. Slowly she turned around. Her room was empty. The only movement was the flickering flame of her desk lamp. She exhaled a shaky laugh and turned back to the journal. New words had appeared. "It's closer now." Her blood ran cold. She slammed the journal shut and shoved it into a drawer, vowing never to open it again. But that night, she dreamed of shadows that whispered her name. The next morning, Emily tried to throw the journal away. She tossed it into the garbage bin outside her apartment and walked back inside, feeling lighter. But when she returned home from work that evening, the journal was back on her desk, its cover pristine and waiting. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, tears streaming down her face. The journal responded, "To finish the story." Emily stopped writing in it, but the journal refused to be ignored. Objects in her apartment began moving on their own. Lights flickered. She woke in the middle of the night to the sound of faint scratching, only to find the journal lying open beside her bed, its pages filled with writing she didn't remember creating. The entries described her every move in excruciating detail. She pours herself another glass of wine. Her hand trembles. She looks at the clock and wonders if she's losing her mind. She couldn't escape it. And then came the final warning. One night, the journal wrote, "She will meet her end when the clock strikes midnight." Emily panicked. She tried to destroy the journal, setting it on fire, but the flames refused to touch it. She tore its pages, but they healed themselves instantly. Desperation clawed at her as the hours ticked closer to midnight. At 11:59 p.m., the journal opened by itself, its pages flipping wildly before settling on a blank sheet. A single line appeared. "You cannot run from your story." Emily screamed, throwing the journal across the room. But this time, it didn't hit the wall. It hovered in midair, glowing with an otherworldly light, and then shot toward her like a predator pouncing on its prey. When her neighbors called the police the next morning, they found her apartment empty. The only sign she had ever been there was the journal, lying innocently on her desk. Its first page now bore a new inscription. The woman vanished, but her story lives on. And beneath it, in smaller letters, "Who's next?"